Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and sea obey him?" May God add a blessing of understanding to this holy word.
Jeff, thank you so much for reading and for leading us in worship together with Stu. Beautiful anthem, a beautiful prelude. Thank you. And of course, the kids. Great, great, great. I love to seeing you up here and dancing. Thank you so much. You were just awesome. Today is Father's Day. I'm thinking about my dad. And one of the life lessons he taught me was face your fears. I am sure he would have agreed with Eisenhower's speech in 1932 when Eisenhower said the only thing to fear is fear itself. The only thing to fear is fear itself. Today's both Bible stories are about fear and how are we facing our fears. Both of the stories are familiar. David and Goliath, the kids already knew about it at VBS, and Jesus calming the storm. So you could as well say, well, the stories are familiar to us, just let's go home. Because we have guests to host and a big family cookout. Just wait a bit. Because the temptation is with familiar stories that you just go over it, say, I know it, and go home. Last week at Vacation Bibles Adventure, I led the Discovery or the Science Station. And every single day I asked, I wonder. So I invite you now to wonder with me about those familiar Bible stories. The series this week we have is God at Work. Today is God Leads. God at Work. We have been talking about stories of Samuel. Last week, Reverend Dan talked about us how little David, I do not know how tall he was anointed. Today, the same shepherd boy is going to face the big, giant Goliath. The Philistines are huge. They're a massive, massive power. And Israel is small. And here they are, trying again to fight against Israel. And one more thing, not only are the Philistines mighty and strong, but they have a giant. Just before our readings, we find that he is about 10 foot tall. Football player, blown up. I imagine like one of these big, big garden yard creatures, but strong. And this Goliath is intimidating, threatening, bullying those Israelites. Every single day, in the morning and at night, for 40 days, which is a long time. Have you ever been on a diet for 40 days? It's a long time. 40 is the day, the time which we know the Israelites. It's a holy night, holy number, meaning long, where the Israelites were in the desert. So for 40 days, Goliath, in the morning and in the evening, he came to the Israelites and he mounted up. He threatened them, he intimidated them, he bullied them. And the Israelites, they were afraid. Very much afraid and scared. I would have been too. If somebody is coming and showing his might and his strength, I would be intimidated as well. Except of David. He said, I can do it. I know what I can do. As Jeff read with us before, he fought the lions and the bears, and he caught even the little lambs out of their big, big paws. I know what I can do. Send me. They put David in this big soldier armor, much too big for David. Goliath thought he was too big to fight. David thought, Goliath is too big to miss. Let me repeat this. Goliath thought he was too big to fight. David thought Goliath is too big to miss. So here comes David, the shepherd boy. He knows what he's going to do. He takes his staff, he takes his pouch, takes 5 stones, and off he goes, and his slingshot. We know the rest of the story. He takes the slingshot, but before he does that, the Goliath, the giant, and him come closer and closer. There's a little bit of oil exchange going on. Then David takes the slingshot, poof, and Goliath falls down. Okay, God at work. Face your fears. The next story, before we go on, is, as I'm a wondering question, why does David take 5 stones if it takes only 1 to defeat the giant? Why does David take 5 stones if it only takes 1 to defeat the giant? In case he misses, I love how you answer the question. In case he misses, yes, he got it on the first shot. Thank you so much. Great, great answer. I love it. In case he misses, he got it on the first shot. Next story, New Testament. All those stories are probably in every children's Bible, and I know they're very familiar. So here is Jesus at the beginning of his ministry is in Mark Gospel. This story of calming the storm is in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And in Mark is right at the beginning. After the parable, Reverend Dan talked to us last week of the mustard seed. At night, they take the boat to go on the other side. Anybody here boating? Anybody here either sailing or rowing? Who would take the boat at night? There's no need to go at night if you can do it in the morning. But that's a different story for a different time. So they cross over at night. Jesus is tired. He sleeps. We know what's going to happen. Big wave, big storm. We're not talking about a gentle breeze. We're talking about big waves. And it's dark, and they're afraid. I would be afraid too if I were in the boat, because I am not Jesus. So what do? They wake up Jesus and say, hey, you don't know what's going on? So Jesus gets up, calms the storm, and he said, why are you afraid? You still have no faith? Why does Jesus ask, and this is my wondering question, why are you afraid? Wouldn't you be afraid? I know I would have. We were all afraid for the last 15 months of a small little virus. And thinking about all these waves crashing in on us in the middle of the night when it's dark and you can't swim. Because I don't think any of these disciples could swim. They know they were going to perish. And Jesus asked, why are you afraid? What a question is that to ask? However, the word Jesus is using, why are you afraid? The word of afraid is used only 4 times in the whole New Testament. In today's story, in Mark, in the parallel story of Matthew, then in the letter of the Hebrews, and in the last book of Revelation. 4 times in the whole New Testament, which is not much at all. And every time the word afraid, this kind of word afraid is used, it's always used in a kind of negative connotation. Because that word afraid is more than just being in fear. That word is to be timid, to be like really, really faint-hearted, not to dare, not to be confident. And basically Jesus is saying, why are you cowards? Coward? If the storms are crashing in and the waves are so high and you can't swim in the middle of the night? I know that I have been afraid a lot. Not only in the last 15 months. And fear is a good thing. Especially when we know that our family or friends or us ourselves are in danger. But then there's also the fear which is not rational. The fear when we are not in danger. The fear of the unknown, when you don't know what your new job might be entailing. The fear of moving away. The fear of the other, whoever the others are. The fear of change because we don't know, because we haven't been there yet. In the whole Bible, there are many stories about people being afraid, but also people getting their confidence up and going. I'm thinking of Abraham and Sarah, retirement age, and they're going to have a baby, and they're going to leave everything they know behind to go to a new country. Or Moses, going up to Pharaoh and saying, "Let my people go." Or even now, David and Goliath, the story. Or Mary, the teenager, being pregnant. Or the women on Easter morning finding the empty grave. And many, many other stories. And you know, every time the most repeated sentence in the Bible is, "Don't be afraid." Don't be afraid. And it's not that God wants to push us to see how the dare game, to see how far we can trust or how far we can go, and us being very irresponsible. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because I promise to be with you, even in the dark, dark times. Getting back to our question, why does David take 5 stones? Just in case we missed, I heard that answer, but only he needed 1. Well, maybe, we don't really know the answers, but maybe the stones can help us when we say that God is at work, help us with our fears, if we look what David did and who David was. So the first stone is the stone of commitment. David was committed that he could do it. David was all the way in. He did not hinder. He was committed to face the giant. He knew what he was getting into. He gave it all what he is and all what he had. David was committed. Second stone. Courage. David's courage is not an absence of fear, but rather the ability to act despite fear. David faced the giant, literally speaking, by doing what he knew what he could best, the slingshot. David faced the giant with courage. The third stone, communication. When David faced the giant, when the giant was coming closer and they were like fighting distance, David used his words, not just with his stones. He talked to the giant. He spoke up, not only for himself, but for the people of Israel and for God. David communicated with his words in the name of God. Speak up to your giant. Whoever, whatever your giant is, go face to face with God's help. The fourth stone, confidence. It's one thing to be capable. I'm sorry, the fourth stone is capability. I missed them up. Capability. David never fought on the front with heavy armor. He fought in what he knew what to do best. He used a slingshot. Instead of focusing on what he didn't have, his armor, he knew what he did have, a slingshot. He knew what he was good at, and he used all what he had to defeat the giant. Your giant might be looking different, but you have skills, you have resources, and you are smart to use them all with the talents God has given you. You are capable. Now the last stone of confidence. It's one thing to be capable, a totally different thing to be confident. David put his trust in his skills and in God, and with that confidence, the giant was defeated. So we have the stones of commitment, courage, communication, capability, and confidence. 5 stones in which David defeated the giant. What about your giant? What about the things you are afraid of? Maybe it's people, or maybe you are like the disciples in the boat and saying, I just can't do it. It's one thing to be like the disciples in the boat and shouting out for help to Jesus, because we all know that Jesus just says the word and the storm is calmed. But I wonder, where are your buckets to get the water out of the boat? What are you doing with commitment, courage, communication, capability, and confidence? Are you more like the disciples, or are you more like David? Are you more like the ones who are more timid? Or, as Jesus would have called them, cowards? Or are you more like David, using the 5 stones beginning with the C? Who are you in the story as you are facing the giant? Because God has given us the skills of all of them, especially the skills to be confident. It's not that God is taking away all our fears, but how we use in what we have to face our giants. The giants as little as the virus was, or as big as the giant is was 10 foot tall. Whoever and whatever the giant is in your life, I hope that you can use one of those stones to defeat, because it takes all of us with the courage and the confidence and the commitment and the capability God has given us to defeat. And you will be not alone. Just look around you. There are so many people here who can help you as well, defeating your giant. With God's help, all things are possible. Amen.